Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome into episode 39 Kayfabe Council, show where we review and critique news topics and segments in the world of professional wrestling. My name is Pretty Tony, and alongside me, as always, is the TF Joker. Joker, what's the crack, brother? What's going on?
It is checks notes 20 past 5 in the morning. Yes, we have just got done watching the Elimination Chamber as well as the very close and straight after press conference that was 100% super informative. And I'm tired, PT. I'm very tired. I even had a nap. I had an energy drink, but I think my body rejects all that is unholy and only wants to sleep. So yeah.
As mentioned by Joker, we are recording this directly after WWE's Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. So both of us are very fresh in our minds about the results, but also extremely tired and a little bit out of it, so we apologize slightly in advance if we get a little rambly or we get slightly off topic, but the bewilderment hopefully will overcome into a solid conversation for you.
Oh yeah, 100%. I will probably ramble and then just completely finish my statement and then just be confused for a second and then say something completely different. If that happens, I can but apologize, but I shall go to sleep very soon.
We cannot confirm nor deny that that is sort of a deviation from the normally scheduled programming that we do on the regular, notwithstanding it was quite the pay-per-view that we'll get into momentarily, but yeah, it was
At least this time I have an excuse, PT, okay? At least this time I have an excuse for rambling and then just not finishing my point.
a lot of us run on no little to no sleep, which is probably you and I specifically, but we will excited to kind of get into this one for sure. All right, before we jump into the episode proper, we here at Kayfabe Council are saddened to hear the passing of Jerry Jarrett. Our thoughts are with his family, friends, and fans at this time. All right, as a reminder, you can find us in video form at youtube.com/kayfabe council and in audio form where you get your podcasts from. On this week's episode, we look at the fallout from WWE Elimination Chamber. So, coming up first, the first match on the card, the women's Elimination Chamber match for number one contendership for the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania 39. We saw Asuka, Liv Morgan, Nikki Cross, Raquel Rodriguez, Natalya, and Carmella fighting it out. Again, I have to say, Joker, this was a fun matchup. Honestly, a lot of the women putting in some solid work. To be fair, I have note here. One of the memorable moments within the match itself was a top rope sunset power bomb from Liv Morgan to Raquel, which only somehow managed a kick out as well. And then also here, striking combination onto Raquel, excuse me, from Carmella and Asuka, which ended up eliminating a Raquel. So, um, Joker, I'll throw it over to you. Just overall impressions and thoughts on the women's elimination chamber matchup.
So like these women put on a hell of a show. I thought this was a fantastic, absolutely fantastic elimination chamber match. I go back to it all the time, but I think my favorite elimination chamber match is whenever Shayna Baszler completely crushed absolutely everybody a few years ago, and she was just a complete absolute monster in that match, and it's been my favorite ever since. This one is going to be a close second, and it was because there was a couple of nice little spots in there. There was the ladies were using the cage, the chain link very well. They weren't really trying to have a match just on the outside, as you've seen like in some men's and women's matches before. They're just trying to use the outside and maybe do a little bit of damage there, throwing people into a couple of the things, but they're actually using the chains and stuff, sticking heads through, wrapping them around teeth, making it look like they're actually doing some solid no holds barred action. It was really really fun to see. The Liv Morgan spot, the sunset flip powerbomb, that should have been the elimination, honestly. because that was peak. That was 100%. I kept up to date with Twitter while we were watching, and because obviously I had mentioned we were watching, we were talking like, throughout the entirety of this match, and I was keeping up to date with them. Everybody was talking about that spot. Like that was just a cool spot to see. Um, and then I just have to say though, the only person that was ever going to win this match was Asuka. If you realize what the reward for this match was, nobody would be picking Raquel. Like no harm to Raquel, but she was not going to WrestleMania. She was not facing Bianca Belair because, as we were talking about before, maybe if it was a SummerSlam, maybe it was Survivor Series, anything else other than WrestleMania, yeah, she would have a chance. But for a person who's coming into this and her gimmick is Big Back Rodriguez, I was just kind of a little bit meh. She had some really, really good spots that showed her off as a strong powerhouse of the division. And whenever she gets to the level of sort of getting thrown out in front of people where she can compete with the Rhea Ripleys and Bianca Belair, then 100% she's going to be amazing. But whenever all your gimmick is just to have a big back and people make comment about that, I just kind of can't see you as a WrestleMania main event right this second. So my only idea was how are we getting to Asuka winning this? And then we had Corey Graves just being like, Carmella is as smart as the day is long. And then PT will attest to this in a moment, but I just wasn't seeing how smart she was, considering we are in the tail end of winter. The day is not very long. Carmella is not very smart.
To that most recent and last point, I was sort of laughing to myself because the moment Corey Graves tried to put over his wife, Carmella, saying she is smart as the day is long, I believe she went for a cover, got a 2 count, and then immediately, as Corey was saying that, went to jaw with Asuka, who was still in her pod, for almost the guts of about 1 minute. So it may not have sort of backed up his play, but I can understand. He's a good brother, trying to keep favors and put over his wife. I get it, bruh. I get it.
100%. If you're trying to put over your wife, I love that for you. That's great. But maybe time it a little bit better to make your wife look smart as the day is long. Because right then, no, my guy, that was just, it was bad. It was a bad look, and it just made her look really poor in that second. Because, like you said, she just walked off and started jawing to Asuka still in her pod. Like, why are you wasting time with me? What the heck?
Outside of that little kind of bit of a funny moment, yes, again, ladies put in a lot of work there. You mentioned the strength of Raquel at one point. She had a sort of front facing carry with one of the ladies and another woman on her back. It may have been Liv Morgan, but either way, her just standing there holding two bodies right there for probably at least like 10 seconds or so. The strength. You can't undermine male or female, anyone. Just be able to kind of do that and carry two bodies is just putting in some work.
100%.
Yeah. To an earlier point about the sunset flip power bomb from Liv onto Raquel, that's a huge spot, and interestingly enough, I was sort of perplexed that it may have not been the sort of elimination piece for Raquel, but like before mentioned, they had sort of a double team by Carmella and Asuka onto Raquel, sort of make her look strong in defeat, that notwithstanding. So all around strong play from all the ladies in this matchup. And finally, here, you mentioned that Asuka ended up winning this match and will face Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania 39. To be fair, Asuka was the sort of number one kind of leading bet. I don't know about odds specifically, but she was sort of the one or the forefront person that everybody was thinking who was going to win this match. I think it's a strong matchup and a solid matchup to have Asuka and Bianca at WrestleMania. And we talked during the show itself. We mentioned that we were thinking for Raquel. Maybe it's a little too early, maybe not necessarily at Mania now, but again, we both agreed maybe like as a SummerSlam opponent or somewhere down the line when she gets a little bit more sort of time, or at least shown to the fans as a presence to the company that she can be that because she's had strong run in NXT as a champion. She's shown she can be a champion as well on SmackDown as well. So there's something there, but I feel like maybe just the timing quite isn't right. But we feel kudos to all the women here putting in that work and having a solid matchup and strong opener to open the pay-per-view.
Can't agree more. It was such a good showing for an awful lot of people. Like we had really good spot for Nikki Cross just to show how insane she was. Liv passed out from two submissions. Carmella got to show how smart she was. Asuka got to win. Raquel, like you said, got to carry two people and show just how strong she was and how athletic she is. And Natalya got to be the boat. Varying degrees of success for these women, but overall, the entire thing is a success as an opening bite. And congratulations to Asuka because Bianca Belair, contrary to what she tweeted out, is not ready for this Asuka.
All right, couldn't agree more. So congratulations to Asuka and kudos to all the ladies and the women involved putting on a solid opening matchup in the Elimination Chamber. Those were our thoughts on the Women's Elimination Chamber opening matchup. Let us know down in the comment section below on YouTube or hit us up on Twitter and Instagram. Let us know what your thoughts were on Asuka winning as well as the women's combatants and the chamber matchup to open the pay-per-view. All right, coming up to the next matchup here. Big ol' hoss matchup of Bobby Lashley taking on Beast Incarnate himself, the now christened Cowboy Brock Lesnar. Gotta say, whenever it comes to these big hoss matchups, and especially Lesnar matchups, they do not disappoint in terms of the hard-hitting pieces. Gotta say, filled the matchups with F5s from Lesnar's and spears from Lashley. But ultimately, in this rather short matchup here of the hard-hitting nature, Lashley ends up winning by DQ when Lesnar goes to mule kick Lashley while being in the Hurt Lock. Joker, what were your impressions of this hoss battle?
I love me a big hoss battle. Like whenever it's just two big meaty men slapping meat, to paraphrase Mr. Big E, another one of my absolute favorite absolute units. Uh, Big fan of Bobby Lashers, Bobby Who, Bobby Lashers, Bobby Lashley, the king of just making you pass out because he don't let you tap out. Love that man. Can't believe how freaking amazing he is. And then you have Cowboy Brock that I just love the audacity of Cowboy Brock. Yeah, it starts off with Bobby trying to get him into the Hurt Lock. Brock this is, and he can't quite get him. So this starts the whole spear F5, spear F5, F5 F5, spear F5, and then I'm just going to keep on trying to get you into this thing. It obviously wasn't a technical marvel. We had been throwing these guys at each other, and they just wanted to scrap. They just wanted to fight. It wasn't going to be some technical 20-minute classic, 30-minute classic. It was just going to be two meaty men slapping meat. Um, and I'm a wee bit annoyed by the ending of it, but in fact, there's no but. I'm not going to make any silver lining. I don't want to hear any silver lining about it. I'm really annoyed that this is the way this ended. I didn't like the fact that we had this mule kick to get the DQ. I thought it was BS. I really wanted to see this match go on. I know there will be a match, WrestleMania. That's their silver lining. I really don't care. I wanted this match today. I love both of these combatants. I thought they were fantastic in the build up. Wee bit disappointed, honestly.
Yeah, a little bit possible controversy when it comes to the type of finish. We're getting a DQ as mentioned here, but see post match, just Lesnar just getting his heat back. He ends up hitting two F5s, one of which he's putting Bobby through a table. And also, lead us not to forget that he also hits two F5s on the referee as well. little work, a little shoot ski, who knows? Either way, with the controversy or the controversial nature of the ending you mentioned, Mania is coming up in about 6 weeks' time. So, do we see a possible matchup between these two at WrestleMania?
Really don't care. Honestly, really don't care. I wanted it tonight, and I think that is why I don't really care about the silver lining or the future of this. I wanted it tonight. I thought this would be something fun. It was for about 2 minutes, and then the mule kick happened, and I was just like, okay, cool. So, yeah,
Yeah, like we said, a little bit disappointing, but it's one of those things where the ending of the matches themselves have been a little weird to say the least. But I will throw it over you on this sort of last notion we have here on Friday Night SmackDown. Mr. Bray Wyatt ended up calling out the winner who was left standing, supposedly, of the matchup between Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar. So, will that come into play possibly as a next matchup for these men?
well, as the last outing between these two individuals, the winner and who was left standing are two different people. Bobby Lashley's was the winner of this match, but Brock was the one who was standing, whereas it was roles reversed at their match at Crown Jewel. I don't think that we'll ever see a Brock versus Bray match. I don't think that that is a match that will happen. I think the more likely outcome is or Bray versus Bobby, but I don't see how that goes ahead unless we do something silly like have the Firefly Funhouse versus the Hurt Business. Um, Even saying that is sounding very ridiculous to me. So I will reserve judgment and see how this plays out. I am not sure if I'm looking forward to that, honestly.
I tend to agree to be a little confusing. Like you said, basically, Bray was saying, I'll take on the sort of surviving member, essentially, in so many words, paraphrasing. But yeah, as we were sort of discussing it as the pay per view was going on, I think a Brock and Bray matchup, I feel like it potentially could happen, but I feel like Brock would sort of no sell all the sort of shenanigans that might happen in like promos and sort of skits or sort of in a build up thing. Brock would just sort of not have any of that. But a Bobby Lashley could entertain at least some of that stuff in terms of a build up to a match with Bray Wyatt. So I gotta say, just we've gotten a sample size of his interactions with an LA Knight. Yeah,
Yeah.
but we got to see how that could transition to a different opponent of a different stature. So I don't know. I'd be sort of superfluously interested in a Bray matchup between either one of these guys, but I feel like a lot of it would be in the build up.
Yeah, like you said, Brock suffers no shenanigans. So whereas the match, as the match would go ahead, the match would be fine, but the build up would be better with Bobby than the build up with Brock. Brock, I don't know, he would corpse on some of the stuff that Bray's saying, honestly. So I think I'll have to hard pass on that one. Even though I kind of want to hard pass on both, but if we have to pick one, I feel like it's going to be Bobby versus Bray.
All right, fair enough. Well, I would be down to see maybe a slightly different matchup. Obviously, a Brock Lesnar versus a Bobby Lashley is a little bit more of a sort of special event that we've had 3 times already, so maybe it's time for them to sort of go their separate ways, and if Bray calling out the winner per se is that kind of direction, it's a little different, but I'd be intrigued, shall we say, about a possible matchup between those men. So, those were our thoughts on Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar's match here at Elimination Chamber. Let us know down in the comment section below on YouTube or hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, and let us know what you thought was happening and Were you satisfied with the DQ finish or not, or did you want to see something different? Tell us down below. All right, coming up to the third matchup here. The Grit couple, Edge and Beth Phoenix, Hall of Famers, taking on the Judgment Day, Finn Balor and 2023 Royal Rumble winner, Rhea Ripley. Honestly, when you get sort of the athleticness of a Finn Balor and the just strength and overall kind of toughness that is a Rhea Ripley as well as a Beth Phoenix, and the kind of sort of sneaky kind of shenanigan and technicality that we have in an Edge, we're going to have an interesting matchup. And I got to say, there were early on the face off between Beth and Rhea, obviously, them having a bit more of a sort of vested interest because we've seen a matchup with Finn and Edge, but that was a kind of fun of exchange, excuse me, happening with these two ladies just laying in shots and trying to work together. What were your thoughts on the sort of early portion of the matchup?
I mean, we obviously talked about this in the lead up in the intro to the match. Like, Finn's going to be the one to take the pin. Yeah, we ran through all of the little scenarios while they were doing their entrances, and I kind of said, "Oh yeah, it'll be a case of we'll see Rhea take on Edge for a little bit. Beth will probably give Finn a slap or two." We were sort of right. You know, there was those things. I'm obviously Dom, the biggest heel in the game, was sort of instrumental in the Judgment Day's win, because you know he knows just how to win at all costs, having been locked up in the pen. So you know, the early doors, it really wasn't surprising to see the guy started off and then retreat back. What was surprising was the length of time that we got with Beth and Rhea. And it's not a detraction. I'm just surprised because I was super happy with the amount of time we got to see Beth versus Rhea in this match. Like, they were the focal point of this match. Like you said, we have seen a Finn versus Edge match. This is Beth's really first match in I don't know how long since she retired in the ring, and hasn't done the obviously Royal Rumble appearances, etc., etc. But as a one-on-one, this was just Beth, the Glamazon, versus Rhea, the Eradicator, as she is known. Um, and oh my goodness, it was fantastic. The chops would make some men wince. You know, they were doing the clothesline spot. They were, you know, one ran into one and wouldn't budge, ran into the other, wouldn't budge, and then they just ran in, you know, big clotheslines to each other. Neither of them would go down. I thought it was just a fantastic show of strength from both of these fantastic competitors, and this is what I want from these big units. Like, I don't know. Rhea is, in my opinion, the top of the food chain when it comes to female wrestlers right now in WWE. She doesn't have a belt, but she's coming for them. Okay. She is going to be the top of this women's division, and she is going to be a dominant force. Just like Bianca Belair is a dominant force on Raw, she will be a dominant force on SmackDown. Because I feel like the only person who can really put an end to John Cena slash Bianca Belair is Rhea Ripley, because she is just amazing. And this really just showcased that, because she did whatever it took to win.
Agreed. It was one of those where they maybe had a little stumble in the footwork department, but that notwithstanding, the double clothesline spot, sort of the chops and the sort of forearms back and forth, and just kind of showing that these two women were very tough and strong and willing to go at one another and sort of not backing down was probably the one part. Obviously, Rhea being the strong contender, as you've mentioned already, and winning just putting on a show, obviously in the Royal Rumble, and Beth having that sort of pedigree, being a Hall of Famer and having a strong representation. Not to say that one or the other gave each other little rubski, but I felt like it was one something that we wanted to see for a minute because they were building it up, obviously, with the Extreme Rules piece and then the sort of follow up at Royal Rumble. Then also just kind of giving each other and just giving as good as each other got. So I felt like it was a good representation or just a good piece of kind of showing these ladies to be strong. But in the sort of latter half of the match, we did have a little bit of a slip up here that we had to mention. There was a Dom throwing in the brass knuckles to try to sort of even the field here and get an advantage, but Rhea ends up hitting Edge with the brass knucks. We go for a cover from Finn. Ref hits the one, ref hits the two, pulls his arm for the three, and then we see Edge lift a shoulder, and then just half a second right after, Beth comes flying in to try to break it up. So a little bit of a rough moment here. Couldn't get that sort of clean. Thank goodness we didn't show that on a replay. But that notwithstanding, I felt like it was just a fun match. They hit most of the sort of spots they wanted to hit. Little besides that little sort of hiccup and the footwork piece, but interesting finish of the match as Beth and Edge do a little FTR tribute, getting that little big rig slash shatter machine on Finn for the win. And like we mentioned as well, we wanted to have the notion of Beth and Edge winning to get their heat back from the vicious attack at Extreme Rules, but we didn't want to have Rhea looking weak and taking a decision because she's lining up to face Charlotte at WrestleMania. So Finn, unfortunately, as the sort of lowest person on the totem pole, as you will, had to sort of kind of take the decision. So interesting tribute, little hiccups, but I thought it was a fun match overall.
Yeah, you and I had a disagreement until we went back about how that little botch went. Hi, Matthew. We had a little look at it again, and yeah, it was the one, the two, the ref gimmicking the three, and then Edge put his arm up, and then Beth came in. I so I blame this on the ref for not communicating that Beth is not going to make the save. And it should have been communicated a little bit better than that. You know, it is what it is. It was funny to see. It detracted very little, honestly. I thought the spot was funny as heck because Dom Dom, saving mommy with the brass knucks. If you look closely, the brass knucks actually bounce and almost hit Rhea in the face. So that's another little nugget in this match where things went comedically wrong. Uh, and obviously the setup of Beth on the steel steps was nowhere near where Rhea eventually did use the chair. So I don't know what she was going for there. Um, and then yes, I did like the shatter machine call out. Apparently, there was people in the Twitterverse saying that it was a Dash uh, Dash Cash the man actually helped Edge with his return to the ring. So a nice little tribute there for them. I just thought it was really nice. Some people might read too much into it, but FTR coming back to WWE. There's no doubt that they're going to eventually come back. But I think this is stirring chum in the waters for those people who are like, "Ooh, it's going to happen." But yeah, Finn having to take the pin here, definitely a decision that you pointed out, and I completely agreed with. There's nothing that you can do to Rhea right now, so it had to be Finn, even though we both love Finn an awful lot, and there's no way a 40-year-old man is allowed to look that dang good. So maybe this is his punishment.
That man has not had a carbohydrate since probably 2002, but like we said, like Joker mentioned, I myself, along with Joker, are big Finn Balor, Prince Devitt, Fergal Devitt fans. That notwithstanding, like we said, we want to keep Rhea looking strong, and Edge and Beth had to sort of get their revenge. So, as much as it pained me to say that Finn kind of had to take the decision, it was what it was. And like we mentioned, little hiccups aside, like that little piece with the sort of trying to break up the pin, like Joker mentioned, didn't detract too much or if at all from the matchup itself. But yeah, just sort of fun matchup. And like we see, Edge and Beth end up winning, and we will see sort of what's going on. A little interesting note coming out of the press conference, Edge throwing down a little bit of a challenge to the US champion, who we will talk about in a moment. So interesting to kind of see what's next for Mr. Edge, Sexton Hardcastle himself. All right. So those were our thoughts on the Judgment Day facing off against the Grit couple. Let us know down in the comment section below on YouTube, or hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, and let us know what your thoughts were on the mixed tag team match. All right. The next matchup here, the men's elimination chamber for the WWE United States Championship. We see champion Austin Theory taking on Seth Rollins, Johnny Gargano, Bronson Reed, Damian Priest, and Montez Ford. Gotta say, one can argue may not have been the most anticipated matchup of the night, but in terms of if you're looking at the stat sheet, man, this could have definitely been a match of the night contender. All six of these guys just putting in work, putting in just spots and spots here. I'll mention some of the notable action that happened here. We have Seth clotheslining Gargano, who was sitting in an electric chair position on Bronson Reed's shoulders here, into literally a poison rana that looked very rough. We were a little concerned with Bronson taking that move, but he ended up being okay. Another huge notable spot. We saw the legend himself, Montez Ford, just climbing to the top of that chamber and just hitting that just drop sort of crossbody. He looked a little scary, but everybody was okay afterwards. So Montez just giving it socks and putting in all that effort. Something that we were discussing throughout the match, sort of being a little bit of a booker, sort of the armchair booker here. Bronson elimination was handled very, very solidly with a combination of the baby faces, Gargano slingshot DDT into a Seth stomp and into a gorgeous Montez Ford frog splash. So very, very fantastic. A couple other pieces here. Hurricane Rana to Seth, who was standing on the top of the pod. Oh, that looked a little scary. You could see sort of Seth inching closer to the edge of the top of the chamber to set it up, but that was great. Luckily, no one was hurt. And then some shenanigans ensued. Before we address that at the moment, Joker, this was a solid match. Again, all six of these guys just putting in work. Thoughts on the matchup?
I mean, you mentioned it there at the start of your comments, like this could be a match of the night contender. We'll get into Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn in terms of storyline, so we'll put that aside. This is the match of the night. 100%. This is the match of the night. For me personally, regardless of what happened in Roman and Sami, because there there were so many sort of head and heart decisions for me personally about who I wanted to win, what I wanted to see, and what was going to happen. Just starting off, Montez Ford looked like $1,000,000 coming into this match. He looked so good. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we commented that Bianca probably made his gear. If she did, and if that is confirmed, she did a fantastic job. He came out looking like so many millions of dollars. And I cannot wait for the day that man holds singles gold, because spoiler alert, he did not win tonight. He should have won. He was super good in this match tonight. Whenever he was in his chamber pod, he was just kind of stood there. Everybody else was like jiling and giving beans and all this here to everybody else. He just kind of stood there whenever Johnny Gargano went past, gave him a bit of a fist bump through the plexiglass. But like you said, we sort of armchair booked throughout this match as well. And there was one person in particular who I am a big fan of, that being Bronson Reed. If you have been a long time watcher of the channel, you might see a little scene, quick hit of mine from many moons ago, between Jonah, uh, uh, between the two big kaiju, featuring Jonah really, in the G1 climax. And it was from then that I really was 100% all in on Jonah, now Bronson Reed. I need this man to be big. I need this man to have that monster heat. And whenever we were going through the match, we were kind of guessing who was coming out next. I'm like, okay, so this is going to happen. Bronson comes out next, lays everybody out. Then Tez comes out. He leads the charge on taking Bronson. Bronson's the first to be eliminated, and that was us at like the like the second pod open or whatever it was. Not 100, like pretty much 100% happened. I don't think we're not Nostradamus here or anything, but like, come on, it's needed to be happened. Everybody on Twitter, like I said, I've been keeping an eye on it throughout the entire pay per view, was pretty much saying they need to handle this right, and they did. I think in the end, he took one super kick, nah, it didn't go down. Two super kick, nah, it didn't go down. Three super kick, kind of got a bit rattled. Then he took the finishers from the baby faces. He took the stomp. He took whatever Johnny does. He just wrestles. I don't care about him. And then he took that sublime frog splash from the future big dog champion, Tez himself. Like, he was handled perfectly. He went on a bit of a monster rampage. Loved that for him. And he was taken down by multiple baby faces, which is what needed to be done. Man's got big things coming to him. But like, that's not to be detracted from everybody. Like, Austin did his job really, really well. He interfered with a lot of things. We sort of he had the Carmella effect in this match. Maybe not as smart as the day was long himself either. Interfering with finishers being put on his opponents. It's better for him to actually want these people to be eliminated. Do not stop them from being eliminated. Little bit of a of a of an issue I had. Um, Big Damian Priest, Archer of Infamy gimmick, long gone. The enforcer of the Judgment Day is here, and I love everything about Damian Priest in this. I didn't feel like he had as much of an opportunity to shine compared to everyone else. I think him and Johnny maybe had the least shine from this entire thing. Um, but yeah, once everybody was out and Tez was the last remnant before we got down to this one-on-one match, we had some worrisome looks from people before there was shenanigans, let's say.
Duly noted. Fantastic performance by all men's considered as well. But we see that Montez Ford is in the last three with Seth Rollins and Austin Theory, but ultimately is succumb to a curb stomp sort of on the outside portion of the ring and ends up being pinned and eliminated. Tez just sort of lying there for a moment, ends up a small sort of break in the action as some WWE officials tend to Tez to try to get him out of the chamber. But in the lieu of the chamber being opened and shenanigans ensue, none other than social media influencer himself, Logan Paul, makes an entrance, jumps into the chamber, hits Seth Rollins, who've been having a verbal spat with on social media, as well as had the interaction in the Royal Rumble. Logan Paul hits the buckshot lariat onto Seth and hits a stomp to add insult to injury, which ultimately leads Seth being eliminated by Austin Theory, who retains the United States Championship with a little bit of shenanigan help from what seemingly was a heel motivated Logan Paul.
Yeah. We had this conversation during the match. Like obviously, Tez took that bump, and there was no X thrown up. He had people come in, and everybody was like, "Oh, I'm giving him a standing O for being able to stand up and stuff like this." Here, I think that is a testament to his selling and the brutality of the match, and the fact that nobody really paid a second thought as to what it might mean for an individual to be taking so long to uh, get out of this chamber. The door being opened, and now don't get me wrong, I am so thankful that it is not a serious injury, that it doesn't seem like Tess is hurt. I was for a moment brought into the product and went, "Oh my goodness, I hope he's okay. Please don't have him be injured." And then I realized what this whole thing was for. Logan Paul needed a way to get into the ring, and what better way to get into the ring than to have that door open for an extended period of time and make a scene of it. He gets in the confusion. There's no DQ. Hits his stuff. Helps Austin retain. I think it was absolutely brilliant, and we had this conversation, PT and I, about the effectiveness of these celebrities that come in. In recent years, people like Bad Bunny and Logan Paul have come in, and they have been taught sequences of events for their matches initially. But we've heard from people in the business that that these guys are really really talented. Bad Bunny and Logan Paul have shown such good aptitude for the business that they learn the actual basics and the abilities, and they're able to actually string these things along. So the fact that you see Logan Paul come in and naturally take to being a heel, like he naturally took to that. There's no prompting, there's no nothing. That's him just knowing that this is how he has to act. He's not trying to get the crowd on side, because for the last few months, Seth has been going babyface. We've seen that, we've known that. It's hard to ignore. So Logan knows exactly how to hit the beat and did exactly what he needed to do. Hung on to that elimination chamber door afterwards, just swinging on it, cackling, and I think he did a fantastic job. You might not like the guy, but I love the character. I think he's great.
I gotta be honest with you, some folks may not be familiar or have these sort of outside folks, shall we say, come in and sort of be popular with them. That notwithstanding, the likes of you mentioned a Bad Bunny and Logan Paul, whether you're familiar with them or you like them or not, have shown are two phenomenal cases of just getting in there, having an interest, putting in work, being able to showcase that, hey, they can do something that's, relatively serviceable. Taking nothing away from previous celebrities like a Snooki had a WrestleMania match, or, for some older fans, Mr. T had a early WrestleMania match as well. So, these were different times, these sort of different investment, different athletes or of sort of athletic nature. But again, he just came in as just owning it. And Mr. Logan Paul is a very divisive person from coming into the world of wrestling and the WWE as an outsider per se. We usually like our own folks who sort of earn their way or kind of come up naturally. So not always fan of the celebrities coming in to do shows, that notwithstanding. But you got to give the guy the credit that he's playing it up. He's putting in work. He's just being athletic and landing stuff and working with what he's kind of given. And honestly, some folks say that sort of his demeanor, even though he may be sort of a nice guy, but sort of plays in this situation as a natural heel, and he played up to it. And it's looking like we're leading on our way to a Seth Rollins and Logan Paul matchup, possibly in Mania. So a lot of moving parts, but I'll wind down here by saying, even with that sort of surprise piece and the little storyline with Montez Ford, bring it home by just saying again, might have been not the sort of runaway in terms of what was in your heart, but on the stat sheet, on the scorecard, hot diggity. This was definitely a match of the night contender. So fantastic job by everyone involved for making this work. And we see ultimately Austin Theory retains. And fast forward to the press conference, we see Austin Theory laying down an open challenge, which, like the before mentioned earlier, who comes up later on, but Edge seemingly answers the open challenge call. So we'll see if that is definitely set for this upcoming week. But final thoughts on the matchup itself, Joker.
I thought it was a bunch of fun. I thought the ending was probably going to divide an awful lot of people, but there are particular individuals that I think this match was going to benefit, and the people who it was going to benefit have all benefited. Um, wee bit disappointed in the fact that we didn't get to see more of Priest. I thought Priest was maybe, like I said before, a little bit outshone here. Um, but the fact that I got one of my guys, Bronson Reed, to get that big shine, I love that for him. Big Tez getting all this, like we joked about it, but we really should have kept a suck it counter because that man was trying out for the DX varsity squad. As soon as he got out of his pod, he was hitting suckets. As soon as he hit anything for like the next few minutes, he was hitting suckets. So if anybody has the accurate count, please let me know down in the comments because like I have to know, otherwise I'm gonna have to go back and watch it and count it and just appease that myself. Um, and then Austin, yes, apart from his own uh, Carmella impression, I felt like he did really well. Um, and obviously benefited the most. Even in the press conference, I thought that Austin did really well. I thought he was yet again um, harkening back to comments that we made like about him ages ago. Take that phone away, take that crappy gimmick of him always wanting to take selfies and stuff, and let him flourish as a heel. And I think just because they've done that and they took the title away from him the first time and then they gave it back to him, I think he has become an even better character than before, and I love to see it for him.
Agreed. Definitely some maturation and growth on Austin Theory's behalf. And I felt, honestly, with solid win for him. And let's see kind of what happens next for Austin Theory. So, those were our thoughts on the men's elimination chamber match. Let us know down in the comment section below on YouTube or hit us up on Twitter or Instagram and let us know what your thoughts were on Austin Theory retaining the United States Championship. All right, coming up to the main event. Oh, hot diggity. The number one in your hearts, pulling on your heartstrings, number one in your program. We see Roman Reigns defending his undisputed WWE Universal Championship against the hometown boy, Sami Zayn. Gotta say, folks have followed us here at Kayfabe Council know we were invested in this story and looking forward to this matchup here, as were folks in Montreal and a lot of folks in the wrestling world. I'll just kick off into it as the gentlemen make their way entering the arena here, and we set up for the announcements, the pop for Sami Zayn. When he comes out, and then subsequently announced, the proverbial roof came off the arena. And I have to say, the nature of Roman getting booed and subsequent FU Roman chants during his announcements in the early portion of the match was absolutely impeccable by a hot Montreal crowd. We get a slow start of the matchup here for roughly 5 minutes time, give or take. The men just stare off and look at each other, and it's just absorbing the hot reaction from this crowd here in Montreal. It's just incredible. But once they end up touching here, slow start, like I mentioned, to quell the crowd. Roman hitting some shots on Sami and just keep cutting him off. Roman playing to the crowd. At one point, Roman begins jawing at Sami's wife at ringside. Joker and I were absolutely convinced that we were going to have Sami's wife slap Roman at one point. We were hoping and praying. They went outside by them a little bit here and there, but it ultimately did not come to fruition. After that, we see Sami end up getting after some hope spot, kissing his wife to a huge pop. You gotta love to see it right there. Some action back in the ring, exploder into a Superman punch, into a haluva kick from Sami, only gets a 2 count. And the crowd, like I said, dying record, but here just going absolutely crazy the entire length of this match. Sami ends up dodging a spear from Roman on the outside, and Roman goes barreling through the barricade. Back in the ring, Blue Thunder Bomb, but only gets a 2 count once again. And here we have the next chapter of the match. The ref bump into haluva kick on Roman, but we see Sami getting the visual pin 1, 2, 3 with no ref in sight. Ultimately here, we see as shenanigans ensues as Jimmy Uso interferes, hits Sami with some super kicks and an Uso splash. And we get a second referee come down, running down the ramp and sliding into the ring, but only for a 2 count as the crowd goes absolutely ballistic when Sami kicks out. Further down, we get Jimmy distracting Sami, hits him with a kick, but we see Roman hits a spear for another very close 2 count. And again, crowd erupts when Sami. Towards the end of the match, we see Sami slaps Roman. Roman accidentally hits the second referee with a Superman punch. Then Sami hits Roman. Then Roman hits Sami, and then both men are down. As if you think it couldn't get any much more hectic. Towards the end, we see Heyman gets Roman a chair, and then, of all people, Jey Uso himself gets into the ring. Roman then hands Jey the chair, but a conflicted Jey stands there, not knowing exactly what to do. Roman wondering why Jey is not doing anything, takes a chair from Jey, and then proceeds to pie face Jey a couple of times. Sami goes for a spear on a distracted Roman, but accidentally hits Jey with the spear. But then we see Roman wails on Sami with the chair multiple times. In the finish of the matchup, Roman hits a spear on Sami, gets the 3 count to a deflated Montreal crowd.
Yeah, that whole recap. You can honestly, if you haven't seen this match, you need to watch the match. If you are listening to this podcast and you haven't watched Elimination Chamber, I question why you're listening to this podcast, but fair enough. I do think that you need to kind of watch this through the lens of what can happen to make Sami a bigger star. My PT mentioned it there. I did suggest that the Sami's wife needs to give Roman a good slap because I think that would be great. I also feel like it would have erupted the entire place in Montreal because we could have played it off and we got a nice wee spot where Sami rushes to his wife and gives her a big kiss. I'm all I'm not a romance person, but oh. But if we had Sami's wife slap Roman after he was beating her husband in front of her, she slaps him, and he goes to obviously don't he goes to hit her or grab her or do anything, and Sami gives him a good right hook and knocks him the hell down, and then kisses the wife. I think that there'd have been a huge, big, massive eruption pop. That's just me nitpicking, mainly because Joker hates love. But we have some more spots in the match that I super enjoyed, and one of those spots was the random wandering in of Jey to this match. You mentioned obviously that the chair was slid into the big dog, the head of the table, the Usiest of Usos. And Jey just kind of wanders in. Like, he just kind of walks. He's not really looking at Roman or anything, just not looking at Sami either, just walks and he stood there. And Roman's like, hell are you doing? And I was saying this to you while we were doing. It's like, oh, we're gonna redo the spot from the Rumble. We're doing the spot. He hands him the chair. Roman turns around. Jay's holding the chair, and he doesn't do it. And then he takes the chair off him immediately and pie faces him. And you've seen just before Sami hits Jay, you've seen Jay do what Sami did. Sami, in the original spot, stood defiant against Roman in that little area of the should I or shouldn't I sort of moment. And I'd mentioned in our discussions after that is that Jay saw an awful lot of what he couldn't do in the moments leading up to the formation of the bloodline. And this was what I saw. I saw Sami and his acknowledgement of Jay being able to empower Jay, give him the power to stand up and save his family. This whole story is just a whole bunch of fun. I love it. I think it's great. Some people, it might not be to their tastes, might be a bit convoluted, might be a bit too long. To them, I say, go away. I don't care about you. So we have this absolutely fantastic spot, and I love it. And then Jay gets knocked out of the ring. Like, oh. And then the end of the match. The air gets sucked out of the arena. There's two things that you really don't want to see whenever you are finished your match. And it's people leaving the arena before you've even finished your match, and people not reacting to your match at all. This was kind of in the camp of a non-reaction for me. People were aghast, sure, but there was no booing for a few seconds. There was no outrage. There was no anything. It was just sort of a vacuum appeared, a vacuum of any knowledge as to what's going on. Why did you do this? What's happened? There, am I missing something? Have I just sort of whatevered? And this is the reason why the match isn't match of the night for me. It felt like not enough was done in order to set up this win for Roman. It just didn't seem. I know it sounds really stupid. It didn't seem there was enough shenanigans. You know what I mean? But it's happened. It's there. It's done. And I guess his next opponent is Cody.
I'm picking up what you're throwing down. I gotta say, before I share my thoughts, I gotta say the nature of Sammy and Roman just appealing to a hot crowd, listening and reacting to what was going on. Roman doing sort of a lot of jaw jacking and playing off of Sammy, but then also playing off the crowd, I think was just done really, really well. So kudos to Roman as well as Sammy for in this. And these guys just proved that Sammy may not have gotten a ton of chances to sort of be in an upper card place before, but this definitely showed the pacing and sort of the way they sort of told the story. You can buy Sammy as a credible main event that people can get behind. So I thought the match was the story of it was phenomenal. But then you mentioned the last part there where you were saying you didn't feel like there was enough shenanigans. I was getting a little bit of the idea. Like I had mentioned during the discussion of the match itself, I'm like, all right, there's going to be at least one ref bump, which I think was my exact verbiage.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
definitely sort of it came in a chapter and I was like, okay, so first ref bump, and then like I called it, like I saw it, sort of, and that's when Sammy gets that visual 3 count with no ref type of thing. So at least he has that sort of spoken to. He can be like, well, if there was a ref, I had you, hook, line, and sinker. And then we get that second ref, and it almost looks as if there was a point where they might have missed the knockdown, but just got out of the way of referee Ryan Tran, but then ultimately got there again. So we had a second ref a bump there to down him. And then that's when the interference by Jimmy came in and just did a quick spot, boom, hits him down, kick out, had a little distraction piece. Roman hits him, Sammy with a spear, and then the kick out once again. But I'll agree, like, this interesting nature of Jay kinda coming in, he just sort of kind of rolls into the ring, stands there in between, does that little mirror spot or the retelling or the rehashing a little bit of now this is Jay in the position of trying to be defiant, but he's also conflicted, like you said, so they're trying to sort of play that up and, ultimately, Jay, whether he has conflicted feelings or ultimately just didn't know what to do in the moment, as we talked about before, him just always thinking of the family, being that one to sort of be that kind of rock and always kind of be the defender and stuff like that, but ultimately conflicted. He just doesn't know what to do. So he's just sort of passive and then accidentally gets hit by Jay. Excuse me. Jay ultimately accidentally gets hit by Sammy. And that's the end sort of his story in the matchup in the sequence. So we get to finish shortly thereafter. So I'll agree. It was a way to sort of sneak in some dissension of not trustworthiness from Jay to a Sammy. One could argue you can make the story work, but yeah, I honestly I'll agree to bring it home. I felt like I wanted more shenanigans. I really did during the matchup. Yeah, I'll agree.
And it's not something that you would kind of like want anybody to sort of admit to. Like we hate shenanigans. Like we just complained not 20, 30 minutes ago about Brock mule kicking Bobby. Like we were disappointed with that. Like and the comments, people are out there listening, just going, please make up your effing mind, boys. Like, do you want shenanigans or do you not? With the Brock and Bobby match, it didn't make sense. We wanted big meaty men slapping meat. That's the Big E dream. Like, by the way, I want Big E back. Like, if it's not evident how many times I've referenced him tonight, I need him back in my life. So, anyway, um, whenever it comes to this match, you called out there's going to be at least one ref bump. And I was like, 100% there's going to be at least one or two. Like, they need to have the ref bump here. We'll get all that stuff. And we completely agreed on that. And we then called out that it's going to be a ref bump. It's going to be Jimmy and Solo coming down, and then there'll be another ref bump, and then Kevin will chase off Jimmy and Solo, and then that after that second ref bump, Jay will come out, and then they'll do some shenanigans, and then that'll be the choice, and then we'll do this, and then we were sort of while watching it, booking this and saying this is what's going to happen, and it sort of played out like that, but it's almost like it just wasn't satisfying. And that was the whole ending to the match and why it was deflated because it just wasn't satisfying. I don't know what it was.
I think honestly, sort of playing it back in my mind, I felt like the shenanigan portions of the second ref bump into sort of the J sequence, like we was the vehicle to just kind of, all right, distraction, boom, spear, end. Like there wasn't this sometimes we get in big matches a closing sequence where you're just like, oh, like near fall, this, that, and a third, and kind of just boom, counter, 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 big move. Oh, and then that's the end. Like you get the sequence. Ultimately, we had these insane crowds. We had this kickouts. We had these sort of moves spaced out. So when we ultimately got to that last portion, J portion, boom, spear, one, two, three, it just kind of ended without sort of a large flourish, I think is where we're maybe thinking, as opposed to kind of, all right, tremendous ending sequence, last 2 or 3 minutes are high octane, this, that, and a third, and then boom, we get the decision. So I feel like maybe that's what you and I are thinking of.
Possibly. I feel like that's the only other thing. Like, yeah, but I mean, it's also the fact that we're doing this straight after the event. It's now coming up to 6:30 in the morning. I am tired, and my thoughts are all over the place. Maybe I'm just deflated because I just need to go and sleep and then watch the end of it again. But yeah, all in all, honestly, I I, I thought this was a really good premium live event for WWE. I can't question anything of at least most of these matches. Rock and Bobby need to do better, but I thought it was still super super good, and it wasn't even the end of the things going on in this premium live event at all.
It was not. We see after Roman gets the 3 count on Sami Zayn and wins and retains the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. Post-match, Jimmy comes back in and beats down Sami with some punches. But who do we hear? But the absolute legend himself, hometown boy as well, Kevin Owens, comes out to make the save. KO takes out Jimmy and then goes for Roman, hits a stunner on Roman, then hits a stunner on Jimmy, and then we see a hitting KO himself hitting a pop-up powerbomb onto Jimmy through the announce table. KO then goes and grabs a chair, and then futilely, Heyman tries to stop Kevin Owens with some punches to his back. So it has no effect. His HP meter didn't even go down 1%. And then we see Paul try to beg off, but ultimately gets hit with a stunner for his trouble. KO, standing in between Roman and Sami, then steps aside, lets Sami hit Roman with a haluva kick to appease the crowd, and ultimately, as KO leaves the ring and Sami standing there, enjoying the adulation of the crowd, Sami feeling slightly defeated, but soaking in the insane response once again from this hot Montreal crowd.
Yeah, it was definitely something done to appease people. Um, the the question is, why wasn't KO out earlier? Um, yeah, I mean that maybe would have stepped the shenanigans in the wrong way for Sami. I feel like it's a good spot that KO even came out at all. And yeah, the laughing out loud at the Paul Heyman trying to beat up KO and going, "I've always loved you. I don't love Roman. Screw him. I want to be with you." And you're like, I love Paul Heyman. He's so good. This is the first time I honestly, in my long term memory or short term memory, whatever it is, and not functioning right now, of Paul even remotely getting physical with any talent in the ring and then taking a stunner for his troubles. I know he's been attacked, but this is the first time it's been like a case of he's actively gone in, especially for Roman to try and help. Um, yeah, I thought the Pyrrhic victory won here for Sami was a nice token gesture. Um, but what could have been, what imagine the pop that could have been from Montreal, heard all around the world, if Sami had have just hit that pin 1, 2, 3 and become the new undisputed WWE Universal Champion.
Agreed very quickly that Paul Heyman does not get physical very often, but when he chooses, it does have a little bit more impact. So KO getting a little shine there, but all the what ifs, like we mentioned, this was the match that was number one in our hearts. Maybe not number one in the scorecard, but man, I couldn't have said it better myself. The what if of the roof going off in Montreal in that arena if Sami Zayn ultimately won. Hometown boy Ariel Helwani mentioned during the broadcast that it had been roughly 30 years since 1993 that the city of Montreal has had a championship. So potentially all the what ifs, but on tonight's docket, it just wasn't meant to be. But I gotta say, the post match sequence of just giving Sammy the ring and ultimately he got a little bit of heat back, but at least he was able to soak in one last huge reaction from the crowd in Montreal being put in the main event of a pay per view, which, to be fair, if you asked folks a year ago when Sammy was still doing the conspiracy theorist gimmick, if you were going to say that Sami Zayn would main event pay-per-view just before or even close to WrestleMania, and folks would be absolutely 1000% invested and hyped and wanting to see him win, not many people would even consider that a possibility. But we just proved here that in the right circumstances and under good storytelling, you can create stars and you can make someone that may have been potentially thought not quite as the guy potentially be on the cusp of being the guy.
100% agree.
All right, as we get into the quick final thoughts here, Joker, I'll say with Asuka winning, the little bit of a muddy finish between Brock and Bobby, the Grit couple winning their matchup against Judgment Day, Austin Theory retaining, Sammy unfairly, possibly losing to a Roman here. Do you see potentially anything for any of those folks coming up in the near future as a possibility?
Honestly, I think there's a run back for Bobby and Brock. There's definitely a run back there. We could possibly see some progress on the Edge front at the very least. I'm not sure we'll see much of Beth. I think she is less of an active combatant these days, and this is one of her few matches that we'll see for her for a while. As for the men's elimination chamber participants, I just want to see big things for Bronson Reed and Damian Priest, and I hope we do not have to wait very long to see Tez back into the solo shenanigans. Obviously, Dawkins as well. I don't want them to break up the Street Profits. I want them to be able to do this together and separately. I don't need them to break those two apart. Um, Asuka, obviously, the future is bright for Asuka. It always has been. She's the first woman to win the Royal Rumble, the Money in the Bank, and the Elimination Chamber match, which we found out earlier on today. She has won a lot of titles, and I feel like she is the one to do it at WrestleMania. Is to win the Raw Women's title from Bianca, but she has that John Cena plot armor, so that'll be very difficult to overcome. But if anybody can do it, it is the Empress of Tomorrow. It is Kana. It is Asuka. So I will hopefully see that for Sami though. I feel like the stage has been set for a unified Uso tag team to come back together. Any doubts, however unfounded, have been maybe brushed away by Jey, and we'll see a tag team match between the Usos and KO and Mr. Sami Zayn. Um, but yeah, for Roman, we obviously know his next port of call at WrestleMania. But yeah, I don't know at this point in time. I need to spend more time digesting what's going on, and I'm just ignoring Brock and Bobby because the less said about that, I was looking forward to that match so much, and that is the one that I've been digesting the most because I'm so disappointed by it. So two of my favorite big hoss guys, and they just kind of get completely trashed on by whatever. Anywho, yeah, that's my thoughts on the whole thing. I feel like maybe that'll change come Monday whenever we see what happens at Raw. If there's any future endeavors being signed on to change the landscape of the storylines.
Fair play. I'll probably just agree very quickly that I feel like Asuka has a strong chance to potentially just taking the title off of Bianca. So they'll have a fun kind of matchup there, be hard hitting, and it could actually be a legitimately possibility that Asuka takes it for a little bit and has Bianca potentially just change things up a little bit. So I would just kind of be very, very interested in that. The possibility of a Bray facing a Brock or a Bobby to change things up a little bit is very intriguing, but I agree. I think in the moment it's a little sort of hazy about where we go next. Possibility of an Edge facing off against a Finn. There was very rumors here that it could be a Brood Edge versus a Demon Finn Balor, but we discussed it during the show that you made up a strong point how Finn would use the demon because he was a solo act, but now that he's got the backing of the Judgment Day, he may not need sort of to go to that super dark place to sort of empower himself. He's got the nature of friendship on his side, if you will, but I don't know kind of where we go with that. Austin Theory, I think this was a strong showing for him. Retaining definitely has a strong rub ski for him. There's been illusions that he may end up facing a person who cannot be seen at a showcase of immortals, possibly, but I felt like he definitely has some room to grow, and he's been tremendous so far. And like you mentioned, him dropping that sort of selfie, sort of self-centered piece and feeling a little bit more natural heel is probably doing him well. And then ultimately, we know Roman's path is on a collision course with the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. Sammy, where do we go from here? Rumblings of him teaming up with KO to face the Usos, but I don't know, man. Part of me and part of probably Montreal wouldn't be mad if he ends up being a triple threat at Mania.
We had this conversation, you and I. I am going to say I do not want a triple threat at Mania. I am probably one of the few people that do not want a triple threat at Mania. And I think that honestly, it's better that it's not. Will I be mad that it's a triple threat at Mania? Yes. Because I think you are all forgetting that a triple threat at Mania will just mean that you all are going to be mad when Cody wins. So if you could kindly stop trying to hurt yourselves, it would be great. For just one moment, remember that it's now Cody's time, and Roman's time is done. I would have happily seen Sami versus Cody at WrestleMania. I would have happily seen that, but I do feel like then all the work we did in the Rumble to bring back Cody is completely undone. If there's a triple threat and all the work we're doing to, if Sami wins, and don't forget, Roman will lose at Mania. Like, I feel like that is a given. But if we have Sami in there and Sami wins, then what was the point in Cody winning the Rumble? Just felt completely useless. And if Cody comes in and he wins, well, what's the point in adding Sami to that match? Doesn't add anything, and it would just annoy people if he didn't. So that's my thoughts on it. You can continue to huff on the copium if you want, but I just want you all to know that I am here for you. I completely understand, but it would just hurt more if it was a triple threat.
A lot of emotions coming out of this pay-per-view here. You can assure that we shared our thoughts and are looking forward to what's going to happen next with all the folks involved. Those were our thoughts on the Elimination Chamber matches here and the winners and what we think may or may not happen next. Let us know down in the comment section below on YouTube or hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, and let us know what your thoughts are on the Elimination Chamber. All right, that about wraps it up for us, Joker. It's been a little bit of a long one for us, but I feel like that was a hot show we just watched.
Yeah, kudos to you if you can spot the amount of times that I stifled yawns during this. I wasn't bored, I'm just really tired. So thank you very much for this. Yeah, it was a super long one. Like I honestly really enjoyed the premium live event. I thought it was super good. The exceptions of the one match, but yeah. I can't honestly wait for Mania now. Just 6 weeks away, and we've got we've got a lot of options open for us. As fans, it's going to be good to see new champions crown. It's going to be good to see the end of stories, and even though it's the 1 day past Mania, I can't wait for that Raw after WrestleMania, for the new crop of NXT people to be called up. If it's for things like Carmelo Hayes, that's sort of rumored to be getting called up. I please hope that he gets called up at Raw after WrestleMania. And anybody else new that could be debuting at WrestleMania, whatever have you. So the next 6 weeks of WWE television is going to be good, and I'm looking forward to it.
Agreed. Decent pay-per-view. Sometimes these kind of middle pay-per-views that aren't sort of the large tentpole ones can be occasionally disappointing, but this one, knowing the investment a lot of folks had, and at least one of the matches here helped garner a lot of interest. And overall, I thought it was just a fun show to watch. So, Joker, I know it's been a little bit of a marathon for us, but I appreciate you hanging tough and sticking with me.
Look, if I mention that we should stay up and do this again, please point me to this moment in time and remind me of how tired I am and go, don't do it. It's a bad idea. So just let me know that.
Joker being in the UK, for our sort of European fans, we know if you're going to watch a show live, it's going to start potentially around 1 a.m. and or later. So Joker, appreciate you being a trooper and thank you so much for hanging tough.
Absolutely no problem, but
Of course. Thank you so much, brother. All right, so for that, for TF Joker,
it's time to catch some Z.
and for me, Pretty Tony, we thank you for your time, letting us be a part of your day, and remember, be good to yourself, be good to each other, and we will catch you next time. Peace.